So one thing I noticed in examples like this when I was walking around the room while people were working is sometimes I think people sort of, I don't know, like it's like almost like a panic and you just want to impulsively start factoring and you're kind of like horse blinders on, like you can only see like what's in one spot. You're like, I don't know. And people, especially this, it looks so tempting with all the tens. People are like, oh, I'm going to take a 10 out of this and I'm going to factor this. Oh, it looks like I could pull a 3 out of this. And they try to factor each side. You don't want to do that, okay? It's very important. We need to get everything on one side and we need to make sure 0 is the only thing on the other side, combine like terms, yada, yada. When you pick the side you bring everything to, you want your leading term, whenever possible, to be positive. So looking at your exponents, I think you could figure out what your leading term would have as an exponent. Which side should I bring everything to, the left or the right, to ensure I have a positive leading term, just for less stress later? Yeah, I think the left is good. So minus 12 from both sides. Again, that common mistake of not doing the right operation when you bring it over. I think a couple of you were definitely guilty of it in this class too. And you were like, oh, wait, what? Why did I do that? So subtract to get rid of it there. Minus 27x squared right there. And add that. So these are all going to cancel. It's 90x to the 4th. Obviously, in just a second, I'm about to ask you what the terms are. If you want to tell me all 3 in the chat, if you want to type them, if you want to tell me the first, second, or third. So first term, what do I have? Nice. Now, in the last class, a lot of people admitted to this, but, well, let me ask one question first. When you look at this, I know it's hard on a quiz, but try to only look at that line. Don't stress yourself out with like the mess on your paper. When you look at that setup, initially, what factoring method appeals to you? Yeah, I see Abby's answer. AC method, yes. I do know a couple people were like, ooh, but 100's a perfect square, right? So I get that. But for difference of squares, you have only 2 terms and a minus sign. So we have 3 terms. That's kind of disqualifies our difference of squares for the most part. So when you guys started AC method, a bunch of you were doing great. You're off to a great start. You're like, all right, well, AC is negative 200. Without a doubt, it's always going to happen. If you want to raise your hand if you are guilty or admit to it in the chat, it's up to you. You guys straight up skip the number you need because you're kind of just jumping around. Did anyone here skip originally the number they needed for AC method? Thanks, Eleanor, for being honest. I know a couple people did. Who else did? Admit it. Come on, Gabe. Didn't you? You even there, bud? Yes. Say, don't leave Eleanor hanging. She was honest. Gabe did it. Right. All right. A couple of you guys did it. So some of you maybe didn't even make it that far. Didn't think you missed it. And people were telling me this was prime. So if you start at 1, clearly 1 and 200. 2 and. Dallas says 100. Thanks, Dal. My class doesn't know 2 times what is 200. Next, 3. Does that go in? No. 4. Well, if 2 goes in and that's even, double the 2, we get 4. Cut 100 in half. Good. Thanks, Gabe. 50. Does 5 go into 200? Do the 10 trick. How many times does 10 go in? And then double it because 5 goes in twice as many. So how many times does 10 go in and then double it? So you'll get 5 times 40. All right, good. I saw that. 6. Well, if 3 doesn't go in, 6 can't go in. 7 would be 2, 14, 60. No, 8. So the way I did this by doubling and then cutting in half, I could go 4 to 8. But what did most people do? They went from 5 to 10. Cut 50 in half. I saw a couple of you typing it. Nice. 25. So make sure, because that one that ends up being the answer is always the one you skip, all right? So I'm not going to continue the list. Normally I would, but B equals negative 17. All right, which signs? Remember, they're multiplying to give you a negative 200, but I need them to add to give me negative 17. So if they multiply to be negative, one of the numbers is negative. And if they add to be negative, the bigger one is negative. So what numbers am I using for 8 and 25? Positive, negative, type it in the chat. Thank you. So positive 8 and negative 25. Good. Normally I know it's usually an x in the middle, but if that's x squared, you want to stick a little x squared, okay? So I'm going to write plus, I always put the smaller number first, 8x squared minus 25x squared, and minus 2 is 0. Anybody remember getting up to this step themselves? Kind of got to here. I got, at least one person did. And, you know, even if you only got up to this step, at least, you know what? People mess that up, right? They started factoring both sides. So if you at least got it equal to 0, added, subtracted correctly, that's nothing to sneeze at. That's good. Now, what factoring method do your eyeballs tell you to do now? Good. Now, anyone who still has their hands up, do we have a question specifically, or we were just saying we got up to there? Just to make sure. If you have a question, please just shout out, because it only makes the hand raise noise for me when no hands are up and the first person raises their hand, and then like it won't make a noise, so I might not notice it. So you could just shout out, okay? So we're going to do grouping. If you put your middle two terms in the other order, that's fine. You'll get the same answer. If you remember back when we were getting ready for AC method, I gave you that worksheet, remember? With like find two numbers that add to this and multiply to this. And I had those absolute value bars and I said, put the smaller absolute value first. That's literally because like every time I write it, that's how I do it for you. I'll never switch those up. You know, the smaller absolute value 8 comes first because I do the list. But anyhow, what's the GCF out of 8 and 100? And then out of the x to the fourth and x squared. Type it, say it, and then we're going to do that one next. GCF, because we're doing grouping. Thank you, Lucas, for x squared. And then how about over here? I know it's always awkward. In this case, I feel like you guys don't like when the GCF works out to be exactly Jackson, -1. I feel like you guys want it to be a bigger thing, but it is what it is. So if I take 4x squared out, I'll have something inside. Take -1 out, I'll have something inside, equals 0. We're getting closer and closer. So what's left inside the first parenthesis? And then hopefully we get the same in our second parenthesis. Come on, guys. It's like a snooze fest over here. We all taking naps because we're digesting our lunch. Hello. Do I have to call on people? Nice. I like Hadass or Jackson. That was you. Because I always get mixed up when I read like either Jackson or Hadassah's name, because Hadassah, your last name's Jackson, right? Where is it? Or am I? It is. Okay, I was like, did I make that up? Because sometimes I feel like I make it up in my head. But yeah, 25x squared plus 2, and should be the same for both. Now, in the work that's coming up soon, I did see a couple of you do this. Your brain autocorrects, so you want to be aware of what you're doing. So I'm taking 25x squared plus 2 out front, and that leaves me with 4x squared minus 1 equals 0. Do you want to go down now? Like, you want to come up? You want to go down? Here. Go. Adios. So I'm just going to tear this out, go to a new page. I'll kind of tilt it like that. Hopefully see a little bit. So always ask yourself, can I factor more? Can you factor either or both of these factors further? Does this factor more or does this factor more? Okay. Which method are we going to try to use? Good. Which one is that? Good. So the proper factoring really only comes out of that one. I could see somebody trying to do it there, but we got to watch out because remember, the method is called, and it's in the name, difference of squares. Difference is subtraction. So we got to be careful. So what we mentioned earlier, the little square root step there to get the factors. What goes in here for our conjugates? Anyone want to shout it, type it, whatever you want to do? Perfection. 2x plus 1, 2x minus 1. Good. And then we still have that there. Now, some of you may have solved from this step and just solved by square roots. That's fine. The issue is, and I promise, I did say this during class, the reason, and maybe even wrote it on some of your papers when you were doing some of those group work things, but the reason I don't like solving by square roots is because when you guys get to the spot where you take square roots, you guys forget the plus minus. So does anyone think on the quiz, if you were in class yesterday, that if you solve by square roots on a step, did you forget to put plus minus in front of your square root? Anyone think they forgot? You could type I forgot in the chat if you did, because I think it's probably a handful of people. If you got a square root step, did you forget to put plus minus? I know it's not just Gabe, because I definitely saw it on other people's papers. But I think this is when people are not really in math class. They're like watching Netflix. Pay attention. So Lucas admits, good. And the people who are admitting are probably people that are very self-aware and probably smart people, to be honest. Usually smart people are more aware of their mistakes. So that's why factoring, you can't really forget because you get your own little equation for each answer. So it makes it easy to avoid missing another answer, okay? So if I set this equal to 0, another reason why showing our work is so important. People who solved that one by taking square roots, I'm just going to write that over here. I think they went to that first. They added 1, divided by 4, right? And, oh, yeah, probably in a few minutes, a minute. So, yeah. Yeah, I was just going to say, does it end? 1 minute ago? I thought it was 41 for some reason. Okay. All right. So either way, you get plus minus 1/2. Oops. And over here, you'll get no real solution. Okay. I'll finish it in the recording, but I'm going to put up 2 new examples for 1 and 2 for you guys. You could try it based on what we got through here. And I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Okay. So I'm going to post the rest of this video. I know some people are signing out. Yeah, you could say, sure. Okay, so it's because I'm just going to write this step out while the camera's rolling over here. And then we couldn't take the square root of a negative, so no real solution. And right, I think you guys can figure that part out. So that is because the line we were factoring from or getting our AC from is here. A is 100 and C is -2. So AC is the product of those 2 numbers, and that's why we get -200. Do you see it? Yeah, so AC method is called AC method because the structure is looked at as A, x to a power, right, really second usually, plus BX to usually the first, right, plus C. So A is that number. C is that number, but if they have a negative in front, that goes with it. So AC means you're multiplying A and C. So that one worksheet we did a while ago when we were prepping for it was like find 2 numbers that multiply to give you this, but that they add to give you this, like the other number on the bottom there, right? So the reason it's negative is because we had a positive times a negative, okay? And then I scrambled through this ending, but who's still here? Either people that are still here, anyone have any other questions lingering on this example? I'm just going to write out the steps for the video. 2x plus 1 is 0. Fast forward. 2x equals -1, x is -1/2, and same idea, 2x minus 1 is 0, 2x equals 1, and x is 1/2. We can get it that way. Or x equals, you would have to remember plus minus 1/2, because square root of 1 is 1, and the square root of 4 is 2. And we just take it, oh, sorry, I'm crooked. Take it from there. All right. But like I said, factoring kind of prevents you from missing a second answer. Here, the reason I draw my little sad face and say no real solution is no number times itself can ever equal a negative number, at least no real number. All right, so can't be negative. So in reverse, that means taking the square root of a negative has no real solution. Okay, so those are the first two examples, and we'll try two similar ones for our assignment to replace any attempt that we may have messed up on yesterday. Okay, hope you were able to understand everything in this recording.